All right, continuing on with our fantasy football team previews, going over all 32 teams. If you are not a member, you don't have early access. If you're a member, you probably already seen this video earlier than everybody else. So shout out to y'all for being members. Make sure y'all drop a like, drop a sub on this video. If it's your first time here on the channel, don't make it your last time. I got you all season long on fantasy football content, talking rookies, doing mock drafts. You can get a league with me. I'll do fantasy weekly rankings, advice, you name it, it's all there. So we're going to talk today about the Chicago Bears. And this is probably one of the more polarizing teams when it comes to players fantasy-wise, right? A lot happened with this team. So we're going to talk extensively about this Bears team, a lot of the turnover and change that has happened, including what we got to start with is actually the offensive coordinator change for this team. So the Bears offense last year obviously was with, Justin Fields. He is now gone, right? There's a lot of new pieces here, which we definitely have to get to. But Shane Waldron has come over as the offensive coordinator who helped out the Seattle Seahawks passing game and kind of got Geno Smith in the limelight here over the last couple years. So they had a lot of big plays. Their receiving core played really well. So very curious to see how this changed. The Chicago Bears are a team that has never really had a strong passing attack. We've seen good quarterbacks and good receivers come out of there. Even like you think Jay Cutler and Brandon Marshall, great players, but we haven't seen a 4,000-yard passer yet from this Bears team. So there was a lot of question marks about what the Bears were going to do. Last year, Justin Fields was the quarterback, and they decided to trade him to the Pittsburgh Steelers. They have the number 1 pick. So what happened during the NFL draft? It's time to get to it and talk Caleb Williams. So Caleb Williams, number 1 pick, highly touted rookie, one of the generational prospects, the can't miss prospects, the next Patrick Mahomes, all of that, right? Has the strong arm, can throw on the run, will run and use his legs a little bit, can make every throw, impressed a lot of people at USC. And, his college career numbers-wise was great. We didn't see a whole lot of winning, but for fantasy purposes, we don't really care about that, right? We want to see the numbers. We want to see the strong arm, and doesn't have an impact in redrafting and in dynasty as well. So in your super flex leagues, obviously he's probably going to be the number 1 pick. And even in some of your redraft leagues, your one quarterback leagues, there's a chance that somebody may take Caleb even over Marvin Harrison Jr., which I don't know if that's the right decision either way, but that's there. So Caleb this season in redraft is probably a player that's going to be overdrafted, has a ton of weapons at his disposal, a new running back, 2 new wide receivers, right? They got brought in another tight end. Like there's a lot of offensive weapons here to go along with this coordinator change, which should help him ease into his rookie year. I still think he might be overdrafted. We're probably going to be placing Caleb in the middle to high end QB2 conversation just off the rip. Like as soon as he comes in, we're calling him, a high-end QB2, which there's a lot of good quarterback play in the league right now. So you'll probably be able to get Caleb Williams in that same range as like the Jared Goffs or the Kirk Cousins. And, you're going to be making hard decisions there in that range. But to me, I still think like he's probably going to be a little overhyped. We tend to do that with rookies, right? Especially ones that have good talent around them, as I'll get to here in a second. So he's the most polarizing player in the draft, and he's also the best player in the draft, which means we're going to be watching this thing under a microscope all season long. So I think if you want to draft Caleb Williams, you're probably going to have to take him earlier than he should go, depending on where you live, right? And if people like Caleb Williams or not. There's off the field stuff that people don't like about Caleb Williams. But there's a ceiling there that we don't know what to expect. We've seen rookie quarterbacks come in like CJ Stroud last year and have a phenomenal season. We've also seen highly touted rookies come in and struggle. You talk about a guy like Bryce Young, didn't have the strongest year last year. So we got to see this thing play out. He has the weapons. He plays in Chicago where there's a history of, not 5,000-yard seasons. We got to take that into account. So I think he'll be a little overdrafted in redraft. In Dynasty, he'll be fine. He'll continue to be a QB1 candidate every single year he's in the league for the next 7 to 10 years at least. I think this is a strong player that's going to produce well. And maybe he's not Patrick Mahomes, and maybe he doesn't win 8 Super Bowls like he said he wants to do. And maybe the outside noise gets to him. But I think this is a player that, for all intents and purposes, is a can't miss draft pick. And if you need a quarterback, this is the time to get Caleb Williams. It'll be a good pick for you. And then redraft, I'm probably waiting. I'm waiting to see what we get out of Caleb Williams. If he goes off this year, I think I can find somewhat, in that range. I feel like there's some good quarterbacks. Like, we have a quarterback who everybody expected to be great like this, in that same range when you talk about Trevor Lawrence. So I think he'll probably go in that range. And I'll talk about his weapons here right now. But Caleb Williams, he's going to be pretty polarizing this year. One of the first moves for this team this offseason was to acquire DeAndre Swift in free agency. A very good move. He finishes the RB20 for the Philadelphia Eagles last year, ran for over 1,000 yards, had 5 touchdowns. Really, really strong first half. Had a great first half with the Eagles, and then we saw it kind of taper off, right? So, we had seen him in Detroit get really involved in the passing game. We didn't see as much of that with the Eagles last year, only 200 yards receiving. He had 40 catches, though. So some involvement, but not what we saw a lot more in Detroit. And I think with that Eagles offense, it was good for him to go play behind a strong offensive line, play with Jalen Hurts, get his value up, right? Signed a 3-year, $24 million deal with the Bears. But his usage was different than we had been accustomed to in the past. And I kind of think they get back to that this year. So even with Seattle, it's like they use Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet over the years, or use Kenneth Walker over the years, and then Zach Charbonnet last year in different capacities, right? But most of it was getting downhill, especially when you talk Kenneth Walker, getting him into space. And that's where we see DeAndre Swift excel the most, right? Is in space. So I also think with Caleb Williams, you need somebody that can be a safety valve at times. And when you got DeAndre Swift in your backfield, he can do that. So I think this is the year where we see him get back on track in the passing game and still have a strong presence in the running game. So you talk about 1,000 yards. I don't know if he's 1,000-yard back in this system, but in Chicago, in this NFC North where games get cold sometimes, you do got to run the rock and you got to protect your rookie quarterback. So expect him to get a lot of work and probably finish somewhere in that same RB15 to RB20 range this season. So if DeAndre Swift's going outside the top 20 running backs, which I'd imagine he's going to be close to that range, I think the marker is probably going to be right for him. He's probably going to be drafted very similar to where he finished, but I think there's some good value there if he's able to stay healthy and stay on the field. So not really a whole lot of threats in this ground game. You have ROSCHON Johnson, who was a pick last year, 4th-round pick for the team. Maybe take some short yardage stuff away. I'm not really expecting much out of him. He's probably going to be more of a RB4 or 5 type candidate. Get him off of waivers at some point, or if one of the backs get injured. And he also got KHALIL Herbert still there. I don't know if he's going to be on the roster come the start of this season, but he'll probably be some kind of a handcuff still for this team as well. So a lot to be seen what happens with training camp and who's on the roster, who's not. But we know DeAndre Swift is going to be the RB1 for this team, and I expect him to perform at least at RB2, strong RB3 levels throughout the course of the season. Getting into the wide receiver core, this should be fun, right? Obviously, DJ Moore was the big name last year with Justin Fields, had a strong season. The team traded for him last offseason. So he finishes a wide receiver 6, which was kind of surprising to me, right? I didn't see this type of performance from DJ Moore, especially because the touchdowns hadn't been there for him in the past. So we saw really big games, a 40-point game from him at some point during the season. Really, really big games out of DJ Moore at times this year. He had 96 catches, 1,300 yards, 8 touchdowns. So I'd expect another strong season from him, maybe at not those levels, and I wouldn't expect top 10 receiver production. Probably not wide receiver 1 production from him this year with the rookie quarterback in there. But DJ Moore is still going to be on the wide receiver 2 radar, and he'll have weekly upside because of his yak ability, his ability to get yards after the catch. So when it comes to who the number 1 receiver on this team is, I don't think it's going to be a clear-cut thing. You're going to have 2 wide receiver 1s playing very different roles. One of them's going to be a little bit more, can we get some yards after the catch or take shots downfield, and that's DJ Moore. And then you also have Keenan Allen, who was brought over this offseason for a 4th-round pick in a trade with the Los Angeles Chargers. So When it comes to DJ Moore, are we getting top 12 production? I doubt it. Are we going to get value at wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 ranges? You're dead. Yes, we will. 100% we will get value with DJ Moore this year. So as long as he doesn't creep up into the top 12 to 15 receivers, I can see that. But, there's a chance that he could. I don't think it gets that high when it comes to DJ Moore just because of all the other weapons on this Bears team. People are going to be expecting the ball to go to different places. We look at what DK Metcalf was for Seattle. We talk about new offensive coordinator. I think DJ Moore can still have a very productive 1,000-yard season, explosive big plays downfield as well. Keenan Allen. Keenan Allen was just traded. I talked about him being traded for a 4th-round pick this offseason. Very nice pickup for this team who, Keenan Allen had an amazing year last year. He finished as a wide receiver 8, and that included like some missed time down the stretch. He was on pace to be like a top 3 receiver at different points of this season. So he finished with over 100 catches, had 1,243 receiving yards, 7 touchdowns, a very Keenan Allen-like type season. And, it was kind of surprising to see the Chargers move him. Obviously, Jim Harbaugh coming there changed that. But Keenan Allen looked like vintage Keenan Allen. No drop-off. The one concern you have with him is injury, but he stayed healthy for a majority of the year. So it's, to me, I'm expecting much of the same when it comes to Keenan Allen. Like, why would we expect this huge drop-off? I just think the value is going to be insane. We're probably going to get Keenan Allen at back-end wide receiver 2, high-end wide receiver 3 numbers, like ADP. And we're going to get top 15 receiver production out of him. The one thing you get with Keenan Allen is consistency. We know the reception should be there, right? Especially playing out of the slot. We should be expecting decent production out of Keenan Allen all season long. Will he have 100 and 1,000 or 1,200? I don't know if he's going to get those kind of numbers this year, but if we could get somewhere in the 80 catch range, somewhere around 1,000 yards, somewhere around 5 touchdowns, I think that's a solid season for Keenan Allen, and he has potential for a lot more than that in any given week. So he's always been a receptions hog. This will be a good player. It all depends on Caleb Williams and how he steps in there. If Caleb's throwing for 4,500 yards, this is going to be a very fantasy-friendly offense, and we're going to see Keenan Allen produce at a high level. If not, we might see slightly less numbers than we saw with him in LA with Justin Herbert. So I think both DJ Moore, Keenan Allen will have weeks where they look like the wide receiver 1. It comes across to me as more of a 1A, 1B type situation. And then Rome Odunze, 1st-round draft pick, highly touted rookie, the 3rd best in this class, and there's a lot of classes where he may have been the number 1 receiver off the board. This is such a wide receiver heavy draft. 6'3", 210 pounds, man. He had over 1,500 yards his last year at Washington too. So this guy is ready to come in and ready to make an impact, but I think it has to wait a year. I think this has to wait a year. Now, Caleb could have an immediate connection with him. That wouldn't surprise me, right? But when you got veterans like DJ Moore, Keenan Allen there, Keenan Allen's in the final year of his deal. This kind of feels like, hey, let's groom the young guy up, get him involved in the offense, let him take off in year 2 after we let Keenan Allen go. That's kind of what it feels like, right? We saw JSN, another highly touted rookie out of Washington for the Seahawks last year. It took him a while to get acclimated and actually become a factor in the offense. And he was dealing with 2 other veterans in DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. Now, I think Odunze is a better prospect than Jackson Smith and Jigba, but when it comes down to it, I think his impact will still be there. Somewhere in the 800 to 1,000-yard marker would not shock me for Rome Odunze, all right? So, obviously, big body, can make plays, special kid. He's going to have an impact. I think it's more year 2 where we see the bigger performance out of him fantasy-wise. He still might be a nice dart throw when you talk about wide receiver 4 and 5. This season. So I think he'll be a little overdrafted just based off of the name, the landing spot, being paired up with Caleb Williams. He seems to me to be more of a wide receiver 4 or 5 candidate. Wouldn't shock me to see him somewhere being drafted in the top 35 receivers, though, just based off of pure hype. I would say rookie hype. You know what I mean? And then lastly, we got to get to the tight ends, man. I told you this team is going to be a lot of fun fantasy-wise, and there's a lot of potential. If Caleb's the real deal, we're going to get some value out the Bears. If he struggles a little bit, I think we're going to see, maybe some overpace here. But Cole Kmet finishes the tight end 8 last year. He won't be anywhere near that. This ball's going to go to the receivers, going to go to the running backs. He finishes the tight end 8, broke his wrist in the last game of the year. 73 catches, 700 yards, 6 touchdowns. He's been a top 10 option in the last 2 years, but this team also brought in Gerald Everett, who had strong play with the Chargers last year. This team has too many weapons for him to be a focal point of the offense. Will he have some tight end 1 weeks? Yes. But this is a tight end 2 candidate. So don't let last year's numbers, which a lot of people, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of analysts who said, hey, Cole Kmet's been the top 10 option the last 2 years. Why aren't we putting him in the top 10 this year? You're probably going to hear a lot of that. He belongs in the tight end 2 conversation. This offense is going to go through the receiving core. The tight ends will get open, but this offense is going to go through the receiving core. Kind of think Noah Fant last year for the Seahawks. Had some big games, but at the end of the day, he's going to be a complementary piece to the 3 receivers that are out there. And then Gerald Everett, also a complementary piece, can play kind of a bigger slot if needed play, obviously in line at tight end as well. He finishes at tight end 23 last year. I don't think anybody's truly worried about drafting him, but we have to talk about it because there's going to be 2 tight ends for this offense. Both of them, I'm sure, will have fantasy relevant moments. I think Cole Kmet's the only one that I would want to draft. Gerald Everett, I would leave on waivers. And in Dynasty, it's a terrible fit for him. Just being the backup tight end or maybe the 1B tight end wise doesn't really equate to good, strong fantasy production this year. So a ton of options with the Chicago Bears, a lot of different varying levels of fantasy output. It remains to be seen. And the biggest component to this is, what does Caleb Williams do in year 1? So if I didn't go into detail about any player that you were looking to get more information on, drop it in the comments. I'll be back soon with another team here very shortly. I'll see you on the next one. Peace out.